What happens when Hollywood's most unpredictable genius walks onto a daytime stage built for polite applause and decides he's done playing nice? Before we dive in, make sure you subscribe to Stage View right now, hit that like button, and drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. Because this story, it's one you'll want to remember. The studio lights blaze down like interrogation lamps. The audience at the View is buzzing, a low electric hum of anticipation. Cameras glide silently across the polished floor. Producers whisper into headsets. On the couch, the hosts sit poised, smiles fixed, cards in hand. And then he walks out. Robert Downey Jr. doesn't just enter a room, he occupies it. The applause rises instantly, loud and warm, but there's something different in his stride today. No playful smirk, no exaggerated bow, just a calm, measured confidence. He adjusts his jacket, gives a small nod to the audience, and takes his seat. Sunny Hostin leans forward slightly, eyes sharp, smile polite but calculating. "Robert," she begins smoothly, "you've had one of the most remarkable comeback stories in Hollywood. But some critics say the industry tends to reward men for redemption while being less forgiving toward others. What's your take on that?" The air shifts. Robert tilts his head, fingers interlaced loosely. "That's an interesting framing," he replies, voice soft but edged. "Are we talking about accountability, or are we talking about narrative?" A few audience members murmur. Sunny doesn't back down. "I'm talking about power. Privilege. The kind that allows someone to fall and land on their feet. A silence stretches. The kind that feels longer than it is." Robert exhales through his nose, eyes glinting. "You know," he says slowly, "for years, I answered every question with apology in my voice. I wore my past like a badge of shame because that's what people expected. But redemption isn't about landing on your feet. It's about rebuilding them when they're broken." The audience claps, tentative at first, then louder. Sunny's expression tightens. "But do you believe everyone gets that same chance?" Robert leans back, crossing one leg over the other. "No," he says simply. "But I also don't believe tearing someone down proves we care about fairness." A producer signals from offstage. The conversation is veering off script. Sunny presses on. "So you're saying conversations about privilege are just tearing down?" He smiles, small, controlled. "I'm saying sometimes the loudest voices about fairness are also the quickest to judge." The audience gasps softly. One of the co-hosts shifts uncomfortably. For the first time, Sunny hesitates. And just like that, the tables begin to turn. Part 2. The tension becomes almost visible, like heat rising from asphalt. Sunny straightens her posture. "Are you suggesting I'm judging you?" Robert's eyes don't leave hers. "I'm suggesting," he replies evenly, "that when we reduce someone's journey to a headline, privileged man redeemed, we ignore the messy, human parts." The audience is divided now. Some nodding, some whispering. Sunny flips a card in her hand. But isn't that part of being a public figure? Being scrutinized. He chuckles softly. Scrutiny is fair. Assumption isn't. Applause breaks out, stronger this time. The energy in the studio changes. What started as a routine promotional interview now feels like a live-wire debate. Sunny leans in again. "Let's be honest. You benefited from an industry willing to forgive. And I worked every day to deserve that forgiveness," he fires back. Not loudly, but firmly. "No one handed me a script called Redemption. I had to audition for it. Every single morning." The audience erupts. Even the co-hosts glance at each other. This isn't the segment they rehearsed. Sunny's voice lowers, more personal now. "Do you understand why some people feel that grace isn't extended equally?" Robert nods slowly. "Of course I do. I've seen injustice. I've experienced consequence. But we can fight inequality without weaponizing someone's past." There it is. Weaponizing. The word hangs in the air like a bell that's just been struck. Sunny blinks, caught off guard. He continues, calm but resolute. "If the goal is healing, then let's heal. But if the goal is scoring points, well, I retired from that game." The audience laughs nervously. One of the co-hosts attempts to lighten the mood. "Well, this is getting interesting. But it's too late. The shift has happened." Sunny's tone softens, but there's steel underneath. "So what would accountability look like to you?" Robert leans forward now, mirroring her earlier posture. "Accountability is change. Sustained change. Not eternal punishment. Not being reduced to your worst chapter." A standing ovation begins in the back rows. Sunny glances toward the crowd, then back at him. For a brief second, something flickers in her eyes. Reflection? Doubt. He notices, and he gently adds, "We all want fairness." But fairness without compassion becomes cruelty. The studio goes silent. Part 3. The commercial break can't come fast enough. Cameras cut. The applause fades into scattered chatter. But the tension doesn't dissipate. It lingers, thick and undeniable. Off camera, producers whisper urgently. Social media teams are already typing furiously. Clips are being trimmed in real time. Sunny sits back, inhaling slowly. "You came ready today," she says quietly. Robert gives a half smile. "I came honest." When the show returns from break, the atmosphere is different. Less combative. More exposed. Sunny adjusts her tone. "Let me ask you this. Do you ever fear that your story overshadows others who never got the second act you did?" Robert pauses longer this time. "Yes," he admits. "The vulnerability catches everyone off guard. I think about that a lot. Survivorship bias is real. But I can't apologize for surviving. What I can do is use my position to create more second acts." The audience softens. Sunny nods slowly. That's a fair answer. For the first time, it doesn't feel like a duel. It feels like dialogue. But Robert isn't finished. "You know," he says thoughtfully, "we live in a culture that loves a fall. We replay it, analyze it, meme it, but we get uncomfortable watching someone climb back up. Because it forces us to confront our own judgments." Sunny studies him carefully. "Are you saying I judged you?" He meets her gaze again, but this time there's no sharpness. "I'm saying," he replies gently, "that sometimes we forget celebrities are humans in progress. Not case studies." A ripple of applause spreads through the audience. Sunny's shoulders relax. Fair enough, but the moment has already been sealed. The internet will not see nuance. It will see confrontation. And Robert knows it. As the segment wraps, the applause is thunderous. Louder than when he first walked in. Because something rare just happened. He didn't explode. He didn't deflect. He turned the tables with composure. Part 4. Within minutes of the broadcast ending, the clips are everywhere. Robert Downey Jr. silences the view. Sunny Hostin challenged on live TV. Hollywood star claps back. The headlines explode across timelines. Some call him brilliant. Some call him defensive. Some call it a masterclass in media control. Backstage, a production assistant whispers, "That's going viral." Sunny scrolls briefly through her phone. The comments are already flooding in support, criticism, debates spiraling out of control. Robert, meanwhile, stands near the exit, signing a final autograph. Calm. Unbothered. A reporter approaches. "Do you regret how heated it got?" He smiles faintly. Heated conversations are better than silent resentment. And with that, he leaves. The aftermath becomes bigger than the moment itself. Talk shows dissect the exchange. Podcasts replay the weaponizing comment. Twitter threads analyze body language frame by frame. Some say Sunny was doing her job, asking hard questions. Others say Robert exposed a culture too eager to judge. But here's what lingers most. He didn't attack. He didn't retreat. He reframed. And in doing so, he shifted the power dynamic of the room. Because sometimes turning the tables isn't about humiliation. It's about composure. The audience who witnessed it live will remember the silence, the heavy, electric silence, right before the applause erupted. The moment when tension transformed into respect. That's what made it unforgettable. Now we want to hear from you. Was Robert justified in pushing back? Was Sunny asking necessary questions? Or did the truth lie somewhere in between? Drop your opinion in the comments right now, because the conversation doesn't end here. And if you crave more explosive cinematic stories from the front lines of celebrity culture, make sure you subscribe to Stage View, like this video, and turn on notifications. Because the next confrontation? It might be even bigger. The applause from his last words hasn't fully faded, but something in the air has changed. It's no longer polite daytime television. It's a standoff. Sunny Hostin doesn't blink. She folds her hands slowly over her cue cards, eyes steady on Robert Downey Jr. The audience can feel it. This isn't going to dissolve into laughter and a commercial break. "Robert," she says, voice calm but edged with steel, "you're eloquent. No one denies that. But when you say people weaponize someone's past, are you suggesting that asking hard questions is unfair?" A ripple moves through the crowd. Robert doesn't answer immediately. He adjusts his cuff, glances briefly toward the audience, then back to her. "No," he says quietly. "I'm suggesting that intent matters." Sunny tilts her head. "So what's my intent?" There it is. The temperature rises again. One of the co-hosts shifts in her seat. A producer's silhouette appears just beyond the lights, hand hovering near a signal cue. Robert leans back slightly, crossing one leg over the other, posture relaxed, but his eyes are sharp. "I don't think you came here to attack me," he says. But sometimes the framing of a question carries a verdict inside it. The audience murmurs. A few audible hms echo from the front row. Sunny inhales slowly. "Or perhaps," she counters, "the discomfort comes from being asked about systemic inequality on a public platform." The word systemic lands heavy. Robert nods once. "That's a real issue." "Absolutely. But if we're discussing systems, then let's talk about systems. Not reduce it to, you fell, and somehow you were lucky enough to stand back up." He leans forward now. "I didn't somehow stand back up." The audience grows quiet. "I burned bridges," he continues. "I lost work. I disappointed people who believed in me. There were years when no one would insure a film with me in it. Years." His voice isn't loud. It doesn't need to be. Sunny studies him carefully. "And yet you became one of the highest paid actors in Hollywood." There's no accusation in her tone, just a statement. Robert gives a faint smile. "After proving I could show up. Every day. On time. Prepared. Sober. Committed." A few claps break out. Sunny doesn't let the moment settle. "But do you see why someone watching might think, that opportunity wouldn't have existed for me?" Robert pauses. The studio feels suspended. "Yes," he says finally. "I do." The admission surprises her. "And that's painful," he continues. "It should be painful. But the solution isn't to question whether I deserve to rebuild my life. It's to ask why others aren't given the same infrastructure of support." Sunny raises an eyebrow. "Infrastructure of support? Mentors. Studios willing to take a risk. A culture that believes in growth." He gestures lightly. "I was fortunate to encounter people who saw potential beyond my worst mistakes." "And you think everyone gets that?" she presses. "No," he says firmly. And that's the problem. The audience breaks into applause again, this time louder, more unified. But Sunny isn't finished. "You mentioned earlier that fairness without compassion becomes cruelty," she says. "Some would argue that compassion without accountability becomes complicity." A collective "oh" ripples across the room. Robert's smile fades slightly, not defensive but serious. "That's a powerful line," he says. "And you're right. Accountability matters. I've lived it." He looks out toward the audience briefly before continuing. "There were consequences. Legal consequences. Professional consequences. Personal ones I'm still unpacking. But accountability isn't meant to be a life sentence." Sunny's gaze softens, just slightly. "Some people would say redemption narratives are packaged and sold," she says. "Marketable. Inspirational." Robert laughs softly. "Trust me, there was nothing marketable about me in my lowest moments." The audience chuckles. He continues, voice steady. "Redemption doesn't look cinematic when you're in it. It looks like therapy sessions. It looks like rebuilding trust with people who don't owe you another chance." Sunny's eyes narrow thoughtfully. "So when someone critiques that narrative," she says, "you feel misunderstood?" "I feel simplified," he replies. The word lands gently, but it carries weight. He leans forward again, matching her energy. "I'm not a symbol of privilege redeemed. I'm a flawed person who did the work." The audience claps again, this time with conviction. Sunny glances toward the crowd, then back at him. "And do you think celebrities sometimes expect praise for doing the bare minimum? Like showing up on time and behaving professionally?" A sharp intake of breath from somewhere in the audience. Robert doesn't flinch. "Absolutely," he says. "That answer wasn't expected." Sunny blinks. "I've seen it," he continues. "The bar can be embarrassingly low in this industry. That doesn't mean I want applause for basic decency. It means I want consistency." The tension shifts again, less combative now, more layered. "So what are you saying to viewers who feel the system is stacked?" Sunny asks. "I'm saying they're not wrong," Robert replies. "But tearing down someone who clawed their way back isn't justice. It's displacement." A few heads nod in the audience. Sunny taps her card lightly against her knee. "You're very careful with your words." "I've learned to be," he says. A brief silence falls between them, not hostile, but reflective. Sunny speaks again, softer now. "Do you ever worry," she asks, "that pushing back like this might look defensive?" Robert considers that. "Defensive would be denying my past," he says, "or pretending I didn't benefit from certain advantages. I'm not doing that. I'm saying two truths can exist at once." He counts lightly on his fingers. I had advantages. And I also had to do the work. Those don't cancel each other out. The audience breaks into applause again, sustained this time. Sunny nods slowly. And if someone still believes you were given more grace than others? He smiles faintly. Then maybe the conversation shouldn't be about me. The room goes quiet. Maybe it should be about expanding grace. The words hang there. For the first time since the exchange began, Sunny leans back instead of forward. There's a subtle shift in her posture, less adversarial, more contemplative. You've clearly thought about this deeply, she says. I've had time, he replies. And experience. A producer signals that they're running long. The clock is ticking. Sunny glances briefly toward the camera. One more question, she says. If you could go back and speak to the version of yourself at your lowest point, what would you say? The audience falls completely silent. Robert's jaw tightens ever so slightly. I'd tell him, he says slowly, that shame is heavy, but it doesn't have to be permanent. A few audience members visibly wipe at their eyes. I'd tell him, he continues, that redemption isn't owed to you. It's built, brick by brick. And if you're lucky enough to get a second chance, you use it to make space for someone else. Sunny holds his gaze. And have you done that? I try to, he says simply. The sincerity in his voice shifts something in the room. What began as confrontation has evolved into something else, something closer to dialogue. But outside these studio walls, the world won't see the nuance in real time. They'll see the moment he said weaponizing. They'll see the pause before Sunny responded. They'll see the applause. They'll choose sides. Inside the studio, though, the energy has cooled into something thoughtful. Sunny gives a small nod. Thank you for answering directly. Robert inclines his head. Thank you for asking directly. The audience erupts louder than before. Not because someone won, but because something real just happened. And as the cameras begin to pull back slightly, preparing for the transition to commercial, there's one unmistakable truth lingering in the air. The tables didn't turn with anger. They turned with composure. And the conversation isn't over yet. The cameras cut to a brief commercial, but the tension doesn't dissipate, it thickens. Backstage, producers are whispering frantically, the social media team already drafting posts, knowing the clip will explode the moment it hits the web. But in the studio, Robert Downey Jr. and Sunny Hostin are about to resume a dialogue that has moved beyond scripted questions and rehearsed smiles. When the cameras return, the atmosphere has subtly shifted. It's no longer a straightforward interview. It's an exposure of truth layered with hesitation, reflection, and raw human complexity. The audience leans forward in their seats, sensing something rare, a live unraveling of thought, a collision of insight and emotion. Sunny adjusts her posture, her voice measured. Robert, earlier you talked about survivorship bias, about opportunities you were afforded that others weren't. I want to dig into that. Do you feel guilt for that? Robert leans back, eyes momentarily scanning the audience as if weighing the room before giving his answer. Guilt, he repeats softly. Not exactly. Awareness, yes. Responsibility, absolutely. Guilt implies stagnation, and I've never been great at staying stagnant. A few audience members nod. The studio remains hushed, hanging on his every word. I think about it constantly, he continues. I've seen talented people slip through cracks, actors, writers, crew members. People who were just as committed, just as disciplined, but circumstances or systemic barriers kept them from thriving. And that awareness, it drives you. It makes you push harder for change, even if it's in small ways. Sunny studies him intently, her voice now softening, probing in a different way. So you're saying part of your redemption story is about extending opportunity to others? Robert nods slowly. Exactly. That's the work most people don't see. The private mentoring. The support behind the scenes. Casting a vote of confidence when the world has already written someone off. That's harder than any red carpet appearance. There's a shift in the audience. Murmurs of agreement ripple across the room. Some smile knowingly, connecting to a deeper truth they hadn't anticipated from a daytime talk show. Sunny leans in again, carefully choosing her words. And yet, some would argue that your image, the polished, iconic superhero, is so dominant that it overshadows the struggles of others. How do you reconcile that? Robert chuckles quietly, shaking his head. It's a fair criticism. People love a narrative with a clear arc: fall, struggle, redemption, triumph. But life isn't a storyboard. It's messy, unpredictable, and often unjust. My story shouldn't eclipse anyone else's, and yet the culture does that anyway. That's why awareness matters. He pauses for a moment, letting the weight of his words sink in. I can't undo the imbalance, but I can use my visibility to highlight it. If my second act can shine a light on others, that's the responsibility I embrace. The audience reacts, soft claps at first, then stronger, more appreciative. There's a recognition of sincerity, a collective understanding that something real is unfolding. Sunny's eyes flicker with reflection. You've made a lot of people reflect today. But let me ask, have you ever feared backlash for speaking like this? For pushing back against the expectations of the audience and media? Robert leans forward now, elbows resting lightly on his knees, intensity sharpening in his gaze. Fear is a constant companion, he admits. I won't lie. Every public statement, every interview, there's always that risk. But fear can't dictate truth. It can't dictate integrity. And if I've learned anything from my past, it's that authenticity is more sustainable than performative compliance. The audience murmurs appreciatively. The tension has now morphed into engagement, everyone sensing the layers of honesty being revealed. Sunny exhales, a subtle shift in tone signaling recognition of his point. You've spoken candidly about accountability, privilege, and responsibility. But what about empathy? How do you balance being honest with being considerate of those who might see you as someone undeserving of your success? Robert pauses. His eyes scan the room again, lingering on the audience, perhaps searching for something unspoken. Empathy isn't easy. It's not something you switch on for a camera or a podcast. Empathy is lived. It's listening, reflecting, making space for voices other than your own. I don't always get it right, but I've spent a long time trying. He tilts his head slightly, his voice softening, almost confessional. And if I fail, I have to acknowledge that failure. Not as a public spectacle, but as a personal commitment to do better. Sunny nods slowly, a hint of admiration in her eyes. So, you're acknowledging the privilege, the mistakes, and still insisting on personal accountability. That's a difficult balance. Robert smiles faintly. It is. But life isn't designed for comfort. It's designed for consequence, growth, and occasionally a little humility. There's a pause in the room. One of the co-hosts tries to interject with a lighter question, but Robert gently redirects. I'll answer, but I think there's value in sitting with discomfort for a moment. That's where clarity often emerges. The audience leans forward, absorbed. This isn't a show anymore. It's a rare human moment, live, unscripted, and electric. Sunny's voice softens even further, no longer sharp, but reflective. Do you think your journey changes the way Hollywood handles redemption stories? Or is it just a personal narrative? Robert's expression grows solemn. I'd like to believe it can inspire systemic change. But the truth is, one person alone doesn't shift an industry. Change comes from collective awareness and action. What I can do is be a model of accountability and resilience, and hope it sparks others to reflect. The audience applauds again, louder this time, a mixture of respect, admiration, and awe. Robert leans back, a subtle exhale escaping him. And that's why moments like this, difficult questions, uncomfortable discussions, are necessary. Because if we only ever seek comfort, we never grow. Sunny studies him in silence for a beat. I can't argue with that, she admits quietly. There's power in truth, even when it's uncomfortable. Robert nods. And there's courage in listening, even when it challenges what you thought you knew. The studio falls into a quiet, reflective space. The energy is still charged, but not with conflict. It's charged with understanding. The confrontation has transformed into conversation. The adversarial posture has softened into mutual respect. As the segment nears its end, the audience rises, giving a long, sincere ovation. Not for victory, not for spectacle, but for honesty, for raw humanity displayed on a stage that rarely sees it. Robert rises from his seat, nodding to Sunny and the co-hosts. Cameras capture the moment, the subtle bow, the acknowledgement of shared space. The live broadcast will end, but the conversation, outside the walls of the studio, online, in social media feeds, in living rooms, has only just begun. Everyone senses it. This moment is going to resonate. Long after the camera's cut, debates will ignite. Opinions will clash. Analysis will dissect every pause, every gesture, every carefully chosen word. But in the studio, there is a final, quiet truth. Robert Downey Jr. didn't just answer questions. He navigated a minefield with honesty, grace, and insight. He turned a potential confrontation into a moment of reflection, for himself, for Sunny Hostin, and for the audience that witnessed it all. The cameras fade to black, the applause echoes, and the viewers at home are left thinking, not about who won, but about what it truly means to face your past, speak your truth, and hold space for complexity. The story isn't over. It's only evolving. The studio lights dim slightly as the segment wraps. The audience rises in a standing ovation, some clapping, some whistling, others silently stunned. It's a rare blend of admiration and disbelief, applause not for spectacle, but for substance. Robert Downey Jr. stands, straightening his jacket, a subtle, knowing smile crossing his face. Sunny Hostin sits back, hands folded, reflecting on what just transpired. There's a quiet acknowledgement in her eyes. This wasn't the exchange she had prepared for. Backstage, producers breathe out collectively. Social media teams are already live, posting clips, hashtags, and snippets that will dominate feeds within minutes. Robert silences the view, reads one headline. Sunny Hostin confronted on live television, reads another. Within seconds, commentary explodes across platforms, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, all dissecting body language, tone, and the infamous use of the word weaponizing. Memes begin circulating, some praising Robert's composure, others questioning Sunny's approach. The digital storm has begun. Meanwhile, in the studio, Robert remains composed. He signs a few autographs for audience members lingering near the exit, his demeanor calm, almost serene. He doesn't gloat. He doesn't dismiss the conversation. He acknowledges the moment with subtle grace. A reporter approaches, notebook in hand. "Do you regret how that interview unfolded?" Robert pauses, tilts his head slightly, and replies, "Regret would imply I dodged the truth or softened the discussion. I didn't. I engaged. Heated conversations are better than silent resentment, and honesty, real honesty, is never easy." Sunny scrolls through her phone, already seeing the waves the segment is creating online. Comments flood in, praising her questions, criticizing her approach, debating fairness, and dissecting every nuance. She lets out a soft sigh, leaning back in her chair. There's acknowledgement, perhaps even a touch of respect, for the unexpected depth that the conversation reached. The media fallout escalates almost instantly. Clips are posted with bold headlines. Robert Downey Jr. turns the tables on The View. Sunny Hostin challenged like never before. Hollywood icon speaks truth on live TV. Podcasts invite panelists to discuss the implications. Talk shows replay the moment, analyzing the interplay between celebrity privilege, accountability, and empathy. Opinions diverge sharply. Some hail Robert as a masterclass in composure and self-reflection. Others critique him as defensive or calculating. Sunny's professionalism is praised by some, questioned by others. But beyond the headlines, a deeper narrative emerges. Robert's answers spark conversations about fairness, redemption, and the systemic structures that govern opportunity, not just in Hollywood, but in society at large. People debate in offices, classrooms, online forums. The exchange becomes more than a single interview. It becomes a cultural touchstone. Meanwhile, the audience in the studio slowly files out, still buzzing. Some can't stop talking about the tension and the honesty. Others whisper about Robert's vulnerability, the way he acknowledged his privilege while emphasizing personal responsibility. The moment lingers, suspended in memory like an echo of something rare. A celebrity interview where complexity wasn't shunned, but embraced. In the following days, journalists interview experts on media behavior, celebrity influence, and accountability. Social media algorithms push clips, encouraging debate. Memes, reaction videos, and opinion threads proliferate. Some highlight Robert's poised reframing of the questions. Others critique Sunny's initial approach. Yet no one can ignore the underlying message. Confrontation, when handled with honesty and empathy, can lead to reflection rather than spectacle. The segment becomes an unexpected masterclass in communication. Fans discuss Robert's phrasing, the subtle shifts in his tone, and the way he reframed critique into insight. Analysts dissect Sunny's reactions, noting moments where her initial authority softened under genuine dialogue. The world sees the narrative unfold, but those present in the studio know the truth. This wasn't about winning or losing. It was about speaking and listening with honesty, accountability, and courage. As the week progresses, Robert gives a few interviews reflecting on the conversation. He emphasizes that fairness and empathy must coexist, that privilege should come with responsibility, and that accountability is not about punishment but about growth. Each statement amplifies the impact of the live exchange, reinforcing its cultural significance. Sunny, in her own interviews, acknowledges the weight of the discussion and her role in facilitating a dialogue that resonated far beyond the stage. Fans continue to debate online. Clips are shared and reshared. Opinions clash, but one thing is undeniable. The moment has sparked a conversation far larger than a single talk show. It's a reminder of the power of measured words, integrity, and vulnerability in a world hungry for drama, but starved for honesty. For those who witnessed it live or who caught the viral clips, the memory remains vivid. The tension, the pauses, the honesty, the subtle nods, the unspoken acknowledgement of shared human complexity. Robert Downey Jr. didn't just answer questions. He reframed an entire narrative, demonstrating the transformative power of grace under pressure. And now it's your turn. What do you think? Was Robert justified in pushing back? Was Sunny doing her job by asking tough questions? Or did the truth lie somewhere in between? Share your thoughts in the comments below, because this conversation doesn't end here. And make sure to subscribe to Stage View for more explosive, intense, and cinematic stories from the world of celebrity culture. Hit like, leave a comment, and join the dialogue, because the next confrontation might just be bigger, more dramatic, and even more unforgettable. The stage has cleared, but the conversation echoes. And it will continue, because moments like this don't fade, they resonate. They challenge. They transform.